Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Bel is back in case you can't see here. Once again, yes, we have, I think we talked about it the last few weeks. Seahawks not doing too well last week. The mixed week of beating Denver on Monday night and then getting throttled by the 49ers on the road. Mm-hmm. The Mariners dealing with a decent amount of injuries to an extent. The Sounders, they flair for the dramatic, I would say. We went over the storm season recap last week. The Rain faced a treacherous road trip. Kraken training camp is currently taking place. Mm-hmm. So, trying to get back into the groove of things, because there's a point in time where it's like, oh, everyone's kind of firing on all cylinders. And then to an extent, we kind of slowed down. So with that all being said, if you saw it, I made a little thing here before the episode went live, made a little post. We were going to do some ticket giveaways to a couple events happening over the course of this next week, mostly this weekend, but that'll be unveiled as the episode goes on. So if you saw that post and you're here for that, got to tune into the show. Diving into things, tough matchup. Seahawks come back home after, again, that throttling on the road down in Levi's Stadium. And, they came out pretty decent, but things didn't really end as they'd hoped for, Bel, as we look over to our Seahawks segment.
Yesterday on September 25th, of course, it was a battle of the birds. The Hawks played the Falcons, and unfortunately, they had a chance at the end there, and they just couldn't come up with anything. So they lost that one 27-23. We have some offensive players of the game here. I went with Tyler Lockett. And of course, there were some flashier plays on offense. DK Metcalf's touchdown. Mm-hmm. But I just like the consistency of Tyler Lockett. He was 9 for 11 and got 76 yards, a total of 76 yards. So I just think consistency is going to be important for this team. And Tyler Lockett has proven to do that as one of our captains.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. That consistency, he's not necessarily consistent. He's been pretty solid since the later part of last season. I went with Rashad Penny. I'm not typically a guy that's like, you see those posts, it's like, who's got the best drip uniform wise, or who looks at the black gloves and the black tape. I was like, oh, who's this guy running the rock? I thought he looked good. But 66 yards rushing early on. It looked like Seattle moved the ball relatively well. And there was a play that got called back because of penalty late in that game that actually Geno Smith threw the interception on 4th and 25 or something. Yeah. It was 4th and decently long. But there was, I believe it was a screenplay where Rashad broke it down within the 10. And I was like, oh, shoot, they're going to do it. And then it gets called back because of a holding. So I thought he had a good game, but you make a really good point, especially now that he is wearing the captain's C on his chest. Tyler Lockett's been a guy that's, even before this year, just consistently, whether the offense is in a rut, Tyler Lockett's always a guy that's been a solid receiver, and he still gets disrespected. I saw some TikTok channel where, don't get me wrong, Amon-Ra St. Brown is having a great year so far.
Yeah.
But to think that he's better than Tyler Lockett, it's just ridiculous to me. And they're just like, oh, easy, Tyler Lockett. I'm like, the disrespect for Tyler Lockett goes too far sometimes.
It does.
Not even sometimes. More often than normal.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a really solid pick there. And then we didn't necessarily disagree on the defensive side of the ball. The defense had a tough day yesterday.
They did.
Way too often it seemed like guys were breaking open. There was just no resistance in a sense. But this guy continues to make an impact, as you highlighted.
Yeah. So last week, unfortunately, I wasn't here to speak on it, but he stood out to me on defense last week as well, with that blocked field goal that turned into a touchdown for Michael Jackson. And this week he went ahead, had, like you detailed here, 1 pass deflection and an interception. So, again, with consistency, if you can come out and do this every week and apply pressure every week, then you're going to be a solid guy.
And it's tough with the cornerback room because if we look at the inactives here, we'll just go over to the inactives. There's three veteran cornerbacks on the inactives list, game day inactive. That's not ideal. And I know that, Woolen is a guy that, coming into this season has been viewed as like a raw talent. He's going to be a guy that needs to be molded, like a couple of products in the defensive back room for Pete Carroll over the years. But I think you make plays. That's all that really matters. That's how you get noticed, especially in games like this. I know that the interception came before the half and such, but making that big play against the 49ers to really help get you the only points you score in that game,
literally
showing up and again, finding ways to make plays throughout the week, whether it, that's how some guys can really get started. So, again, with how difficult the game was defensively, Mariota kind of did what he wanted. There was that one time where he fumbled on the read option, but I think outside of that, he had a pretty decent game. Yes. And he's had a decent year so far. Atlanta almost came back against the Rams the week before this. So I don't think they're a bad team, but considering everything and how you came out pretty decent offensively, I really thought you should have won this game. Just self-inflicted stuff. And that's what happens to bad teams. I know you kind of ride on the high of beating Denver on Monday night. It's an exciting game. But then I talked to a few people heading into the Niners game. It's like things are going to come back to reality to an extent. And you're seeing that. So you just, bad teams, if you can get good coaching out of it, you can kind of work around it. I think that's what with Atlanta, they have a poor roster. Yeah. And they got coached well. I think their coaching staff does a great job of, using Cordero Patterson has historically been a kick returner. And now you see him gashing runs, great speed. They've got Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Yep. And, Marcus Mariota's been kind of a journeyman. So they're using what they've got. And they did it well. They adjusted. They were able. Late in the game, I didn't see as much running the ball from Seattle, not as well as they did in the first half. Yeah. So, good teams adjust. So, it's a tough one. But again, when we look at this team, we're not expecting much anyway. So it's like some of these, I'm not even as disappointed as I have been in past years, because when you're a playoff team, you're like, you lose to a team where you've got a worse roster. The point was made, though, that Seattle had like 400 yards of offense on 69 plays. You did pretty decent on third down. You should win that game.
Yeah, but Geno did over 300 again, didn't he?
Yeah, Geno had a pretty solid game. That interception at the end is 4th and 25. You got to throw the ball up. I understand that. But it's just more so of the penalties and just stuff like that, and the defense being ripped apart. It's there are going to be holes on bad teams, and they were exploited. So I don't know, a tough one, but again, I'm not, and now you got a probably tougher contest against the Detroit team that, like we talked about before we started, has some pretty solid talent.
Yeah, I think there are some good takeaways, though, from this loss. I saw a lot of our tight ends getting the ball, and it just felt like it was distributed kind of evenly out there. So it's nice to see guys getting touches, and then who knows who might break out and have a good game. So
and it is we've got 14 games left to play in a long season, and I that's something that I did think about. You go home, and a lot of the headlines I saw from the Seahawks app or even the ESPN were the tight end production, and that was something I was looking into going into the season, because you've got Noah Fant and Will Dissly and Kobe Parkinson. All of them bring different things to the table. Parkinson's like 6'8". Dissly, the beginning of his career had some great offensive performances, really looked like a really mobile tight end, a guy who could run, be a yards after catch kind of guy. And then he ruptured his patella tendon and kind of been a blocking guy. Noah Fant is a really athletic tight end. So they all bring different things. And it was weird because it felt like, I'm not necessarily discrediting Russell, but before this year, you didn't see as much tight end production, which is interesting to me. And go back to Jimmy Graham. When Seattle had Jimmy Graham, he wasn't really properly used until his last year in Seattle. And it's like, you've got a guy who's basically, I remember he argued that he was a wide receiver when he was looking for a contract with New Orleans. He basically was a receiver, and you couldn't use him properly. So it's just interesting to see this tight end production now. And so I thought that was a good point.
Yeah. So hopefully they take some good things out of this very close loss. As we head into some injury news here, I know that you reported on some of it here, but Shelby Harris was out, Justin Coleman and Joey Blount were doubtful, and then questionable was Quandre Diggs, who sounded like looked good enough to play on Friday.
And yeah, he was good.
Yeah. So inactives as we head over to some more here. Shelby Harris, Artie Burns, Justin Coleman, Sidney Jones, Joey Blount, Jake Kernan, and Derek Young. And then injuries against Atlanta. Travis Homer bruises his ribs. Pete Carroll says that Homer did not break his ribs, but there are complications of the injury. So hopefully he's able to heal quite quickly there.
I mean, yeah, that's, you know, I know I talked about it, but having Burns and Coleman out,
yeah,
again, Burns is a guy I was excited about this offseason because he's got a little bit of history with some staff that Seattle brought in. Coleman had a career year in Seattle. He's been decent since then. But again, it's like you can't have three of those guys in your cornerback room out. You can't. It's really difficult, and you're getting banged up. Shelby Harris had a personal matter to attend to. It's really tough. I mean, getting banged up this early, Jamal Adams being out for the year,
right?
Not ideal, you know. Yeah. So to see all this happen is just it's unfortunate already, considering that you're already facing an uphill battle.
Yeah, you don't know what the potential of the team can be when you don't have your roster. So.
Yeah.
Moving on to some team notes here. On September 20th, Geno Smith is going to trademark his quote, guys. They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though. That will be trademarked by Geno Smith. And this is not a joke because I double-checked with Chuck before we started this episode.
Do you have some thoughts you'd like to share on that? I mean, I know it's different, but NIL, you know, people are capitalizing off their likeness. And there was the whole last year, let Russ cook, all those shirts. I see those in Goodwill nowadays.
Where they belong.
Yeah. So it's always funny to like ride the emotion off of like moments like that. Like Breaking T does a good job with, you know, last year with the Mariners, Dylan Moore. The Mariners came back. There was Sleepless in Seattle. It was a photo of Dylan Moore. Yeah. There's Abraham Toro shirts that said Toro time. So I don't know. What do you it seems like a lot of people tried to ride the moment of something before it goes away. I feel like you already might be away from it now.
I completely agree. After these last 2 weeks, I think that I don't know if it has very much validity there.
I wouldn't buy a shirt. I'm sorry, Geno. I wouldn't buy the shirt.
Well,
yeah.
I always thought trademarking quotes was kind of interesting, but hey, Geno, do you? If you think that people are going to continue to write you off, then hey, this might be a very accurate quote for you. So moving on to the September 21st, former safety Kam Chancellor listed as one of the 129 modern era nominees for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2023. Just some accolades here on Kam. He is a Super Bowl champion, a 2-time second team All-Pro, 4-time Pro Bowler, 12 interceptions, and 9 forced fumbles on his career. Obviously very deserving.
It's a tough slope. You know, you look at that list of 129, that's a lot. And, you know, obviously you can make it if you're not first ballot. You know, there's some guys on that list that I'm sure are first ballot. It's tough with the Hall of Fame because they're, you know, the criteria, wherever. It's like, did you change the game? If we're arguing it from that point, what legacy you left, Kam Chancellor was a pretty impactful guy. You see guys like a Derwin James, who are built like linebackers and are playing safety and are able to have that agility, have that sort of skill set at the safety position, be a real box guy. I mean, all you have to do is type in Kam Chancellor into YouTube and you can see what kind of guy he was, blowing up offensive linemen, which isn't easy to do. But also, I mean, Super Bowl 48, smacking the goofy out of Wes Welker and setting the tone for that game, but also being a guy who is like a silent leader in that Legion of Boom. Yes. All three of those prime Legion of Boom members brought their own thing. Earl Thomas was, I mean, Richard was kind of the mouthpiece, right? He did the most talking. Earl did some here and there, but Richard kind of, you know, all of those guys brought different things. Richard, tall, lanky cornerback,
very confident,
backed up his talk, helped in the run game. Even in watching these games this year, a lot of people have talked about, you know, cornerbacks trying to set the edge. Richard Sherman, like, set some of the tone for that. Earl Thomas might have been an undersized guy, really rangy, could play like a center fielder. Kam Chancellor built like they all brought different things. Mm-hmm. If we're arguing for Kam's case, I would certainly say there's nobody really like him. Even Derwin James I think he's a solid safety, but he's not Kam Chancellor. It's tough because you want to be unbiased about something like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's first ballot, but I think I would give him a yes eventually reaching the Hall of Fame. I know some guys have had to wait years and years and years.
Yes.
I would hope that wouldn't have to happen, but you'd have to think some of those members from the Legion of Boom make it because, you look at Richard and the way, even I don't want to say his name because he's a prisoner, but Brandon Browner, Byron Maxwell, those guys, changed the way that referees call things. I mean, like the 5-yard rule for cornerbacks and wide receivers. You couldn't bump and run like they did. They used to, and they changed that. The NFL changed that.
So literally an impact to the game.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to get at. And I kind of mouth vomited everywhere about it. But that's my point. So I would think yes. It probably won't be first ballot, unfortunately. You'd like to see that, but there are some guys that we could look at the list, I'm sure. But I think he does make it.
Well, we'll be sure to notify you guys as soon as we know here. On the 22nd, some news on Jamal Adams. He had successful surgery to repair his torn quadricep tendon and is back home recovering. Of course, as we stated, he's out for the season on his recovery. Will be greatly missed on the field. We move on to some league news here. The league may force the Washington Commanders owner out. Multiple owners think consideration will be given to convincing Dan Snyder to sell the Washington Commanders or flat out removing him. So also on more exciting Super Bowl news, and if you have missed Rihanna like I have, she teased a Super Bowl 2023 halftime show. So it was actually announced that she would be doing the 2023 halftime show. But just her latest Instagram feeds and rumored it. She had I think her hands holding the football.
It's literally her hand holding a ball. It was really interesting to me because when I was at training camp for the Kraken here over the past week, it was like Taylor Swift was going to be the one who was headlining it. And a couple of media members were talking about it. And I was like, I have to admit, I'm not someone who puts a lot of stake into the halftime show. I mean, I'll watch it, but I know like there are Super Bowl parties, right? People are like, I'm just here for the halftime show. I'm like, okay, make it a big deal. I love Rihanna. I won't disagree with that. So I will take that over Taylor Swift. I won't lie. It's just really interesting to see how it was all like, it's always a spectacle each year when it's like trying to figure out who it's going to be. Yeah. So I'm not mad at it.
I'm overjoyed. I've missed her. More news here regarding the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is being changed after being a consistent set of, the Pro Bowl game since 1951. So
was in Hawaii for a long time, has changed venues. They had the thing, I don't know if you remember it a few years ago, where it was like Coach Prime versus Coach Michael Irvin, and then Chris Carter, Randy Moss, and they had those ugly neon uniforms. And they've tried to change things around, and we've talked about the Pro Bowl here before.
We have, not very thrilled to watch it. I don't even think we did tune in. So
no, I remember that. We ignored it. It's just really interesting to see how the NFL is trying to, draw some more ratings in and get more interest in it with what they're doing now.
Yeah. So it is being renamed to the Pro Bowl Games because it's going to be a week long of skills competitions, capped off by a flag football game that will take place on February 5th. Flag football, that was interesting to me. It feels like a digression, but I could understand it for injury purposes.
Yeah, I know that it's tough because I remember, I think we were talking about it. The Pro Bowl used to be hosted after the Super Bowl so that the Super Bowl participants could participate. I remember before we started, Bel pretty loudly, it was like flag football in this questioning tone. I understand it. I don't know if this is going to help. The skills some of the skills competitions are cool, I will say, like the accuracy stuff. Flag football, I don't care. The Pro Bowl games just kind of seems like it's like they're taking field day from middle school and making it. That's what it sounds like. So I don't know. You look at like with baseball's got the home run derby. We turned into the home run derby after we recorded one of the shows here. The dunk contest in the NBA.
That's a hit.
The skills competitions, like I don't know. The other all-star competitions have their things. I remember in the NHL they used to have goalie races where the goalie, you see how big gear they would race. They stop now because of injuries, but stuff like that. There's things that you could tune into that there's nothing in the NFL that I really say, oh, I'm gonna tune in for this competition specifically.
Yeah, sure.
Like I would watch the home run derby even if Julio wasn't in it.
Yeah.
So you got to find. I don't have the answers to what makes the Pro Bowl games watchable.
Yeah.
But I'll give it a chance this year, see what it's about.
Yeah.
If they disappoint me.
I think that's probably why people will tune in, just to see what the difference is from before. So we shift back over to our Seahawks here. They sit at a 1-2 record for the season currently. They are 4th in the NFC West. That number one standing short-lived. I'm sorry.
It's like Geno's quote.
And then looking ahead, they will be playing on Sunday, October 2nd at the Detroit Lions. That is a 10 a.m. game.
Early morning, and I don't know. I don't feel too strongly about that game.